Well, say a quick welcome, and we're our forum tonight. We have Howard prepared to present about mobile installation. So start out by handing it over to Howard. K0LKD, go ahead.
Okay, Roger that. Let me see if I can get my screen sharing working here. There we go. Well, this is sort of a quickly thrown together presentation about ham radio mobile installations. I think I put this together maybe a year or two back, and this is really going to be a description of what I've done with my vehicle. Some of you have probably seen it. I have a Saturn Vue with a bunch of different stuff on it. So this presentation is, based on my own experience. So first thing, there's some basic steps. First thing you need to decide is what you want to do. VHF, UHF, HF, or both, and then decide what type of transceivers and radios you want to use. The next thing probably is the antenna. Of course, there's a number of different things you can do that. Remotely tuned HF mobile antennas, often called screwdriver antennas, are a good choice for HF. Third, the installation. Safety is a really paramount thing. Radio gear needs to be installed permanently, and the gear should be mounted to avoid as much distraction as possible. I spent a lot of time thinking about where I wanted to mount my stuff and what I wanted to do. And one of the things I wanted to, in that regard, was to avoid having to look down, look somewhere else, and that sort of thing. So that kind of drove what I ended up doing with my particular setup. And of course, everybody's vehicle is different, so there are a number of different possibilities and different things you may have to do to meet some of that. The fourth thing is wiring. Never use existing wiring unless the accessory sockets are rated. An expected load of 15 to 20 amps. Individually fused connections to the battery are recommended, except where you have the engine idle shutoff situation. So I had one of the mechanics at the dealer I go to ran the wire through the firewall, which was the toughest thing you're going to run into, I think, is getting it through. And then each lead was individually fused and runs direct to a distribution box, and then everything fans out from there. Let's see, transceivers. There are a variety of radios. Obviously, everybody's got different needs and tastes, so smaller the better, I find, and the transceiver ought to have a built-in antenna tuner. So in my case, I'm using for HF, I'm using Elecraft, either a KX3 or KX2. I like the KX2 better because it's a little smaller. And then I have a Kenwood 710, which is a dual band UHF VHF radio. In addition to that, I have a dedicated 220. It's a TYT 9000, about a 50 watt transceiver. Radios with remote control head capability are usually easier to install. And that's particularly true with the Kenwood, and we'll see these in a minute here. I mount the main part of the radio under one of the seats, and then all I have to do is run control lines to the control head, which is mounted up on the dash. With the Elecraft radios, I mount those on the dash, and then I have a 100 watt amp sitting under the front seat. Handheld radio, UHF, VHF radios normally have less power, obviously in mobile, but they can be used successfully depending on whether you have amps and kind of antennas and that sort of thing. So here's some pictures of various installations that we have that I gathered from various places. Let's see, I don't know if you can see my, let me pull it up here. Make sure I can see. Here's a picture of my setup. It's which is the Saturn View, which is I think a 206 model. So up front, I have the Kenwood along with a APRS screen and setup. I have the KX3 to the right, and then to the left, I have the TYT 9000 and 220 rig. And then I have two speakers. So you can see one of them here in the middle. So right there, and then one off to the left. So right there, I see everything that I need to look at is right there at eye level. And so far, that seems to work out pretty well. Now, in addition, I have for the UHF, VHF antennas, I have those mounted. I don't know if I have that listed here. The diamond, the diamond motorized mount. Let me go back here, which lifts and tilt over. I can push a button inside the console here, and where we park frequently, the clearance is very low, so I wouldn't be able to get into the parking garages. It's up in Bethesda at Walter Reed. I can fold those down and have no trouble getting in. And of course, here's the screwdriver antenna that I mounted for HF. And that one is the Baby Tar Heel 2, I think, and it will tune from 80 to 6 meters. And so it was convenient that it was the biggest antenna that I could use predicated on the mount, the size of mount I had available. Let's see. And again, there's a variety of different antennas you can use. And so let me see here. I'm checking something else really quick. Some of them use whips, some of them use a variety of different things, but this one's worked out pretty well so far, although right at the moment I have a problem. I've had it on the car probably 3 or 4 years, so I've got to do a little maintenance on the antenna. Here are some other stuff you can use, other antennas and accessories that you can use for handheld radios, such as the Baofeng or others. And it's a matter of adapting it to your situation. There, you can buy the Lido mounts, which are convenient to set to plug your radios and your speaker mic and that stuff into, and I think they work pretty good. The only problem I had with that sort of thing was that that you have to kind of look down. They're not at eye level, so that was one of the concerns I had about that sort of thing. So. So one reason I didn't do that. Regarding antennas, remotely tuned HF antennas, often called screwdrivers, are a good choice. As I said before, they offer a number of advantages over monobanders, including retuning while underway. This particular Tar Heel has a bridge that can detect RF, and the controller, you can set it up to select the lowest SWR, and it'll do that automatically, and it'll remember that position. So that makes it easier, especially when you're on the road, and of course reduces potential distractions. Some of the other choices include a Scorpion 680, very efficient, very rugged, and expensive. As I said, the lesser expensive choices, such as the Tar Heel and Amatron, also work pretty well. Some of them, antennas will have special manning requirements depending on the vehicle. And of course, you have to adapt the mounting to whatever kind of vehicle you can. So, and I mentioned before, UHF, EHF, I added the diamond, which was K9000 motorized tilt mount. And I think those were run about $100 if I recall. And that, like I said, enables me to get in and out of garages, places with low overhead. Of course, you've got all sorts of mounts, and you see a few vehicles like this. I couldn't resist plugging this in. So you've probably got every kind of antenna, there is just about stuck on this car. Here's some antenna mounts, the big magnetic mounts. I think these are diamond, a couple of them with adjustable. That's basically what I have, the 1/3 from the right, left. And then there's a couple other smaller kind of mounts that seem to work, again, depending on the vehicle. This shows some installations on typical installations on vehicles. You have the bigger antennas, with a heavier duty mount, usually on the back, on the side. You have a pickup there sitting in the middle with fastened to the trailer hitch. Then if you happen to be out in farm country, you can even mount one on your tractor. Like being from farm country in Kansas, I couldn't resist sticking this sort of thing, a picture in here, and then of course a more standard mount on the back of a car here. So let's see. The gear needs to be permanently installed to avoid avoiding magnets and wedges and blocks of wood, clamps, Velcro, anything less is not that safe in events of a crash. Also, airbag locations need to be factored in. In my case, the KX3 kind of is into the edge of the airbag zone, but I took a chance. That was about as good as I could get it under the circumstances. And then again, trying to mount the gear so you minimize your distractions. Usually direct fuse, both positive and negative, from the battery, as I indicated, to the equipment is always a good idea. There are ways to feed the power leads through the vehicle firewall, and that's usually the trickiest part. The thing to avoid, of course, is some of these engine idle shutoff stuff that have a battery monitoring system that really shouldn't be circumvented. And some of the vehicles do have accessory power outlets that are rated much higher than normal, like 15 or 20 amps, that sort of thing. And the other thing I wanted to mention, and I meant to mention in the beginning, is a lot of this presentation was based on my experience, but also info from the K0BG website for mobile amateur radio operations at k0bg.com. And the 3905 Century Club mobile 3905ccn.com installation guide by K0WJ. And particularly the K0BG has lots of examples and good information. So, and as I said, what I ended up doing by putting all the radios in there, I had a capability to go from 80 meters all the way to 70 centimeters. So, I've had it on the road quite a bit, and things have generally worked out pretty well. I haven't had a lot of trouble with it. So I can run with the Kenwood probably 50 watts on UHF, VHF, probably close to 50 watts on 220, and then anywhere from, almost 0 to 100 watts on HF. So that's basically the setup. And do we have any questions?
How many times have you been stopped?
Actually, I haven't been stopped at all. No, I have not. I've never been stopped. I've had people, various parking lots occasionally ask me what that is, but I haven't had a bit of trouble. I do have amateur radio license plates. I don't know if that makes any difference or not, but nobody's ever questioned it, particularly from the police point of view.
Weren't you once part of a group that was approached by Fairfax County Police over at the Thoreau school because a bunch of old guys walk around the parking lot with antennas?
Yeah, that's true. That was a bunch of us. I didn't specifically get asked, but it was probably considering who was there, that probably was a suspicious looking bunch. But Other than that, we've never been questioned.
What did they ask about?
I don't know. I wasn't in part of the conversation, but somebody explained to him what it was, and you know, I don't think there was any more discussion about it. Wasn't any real question. Somebody had called and said, you know, there was some odd activity going on. So, given that was part of the club when we were meeting, you know, face to face, so you know, that's kind of understandable.
Was that when the cops came to the meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was fun.
yeah, it was.
I have photos and video of that.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Evidence for court.
I asked them to pose, and they said absolutely.
Uh-huh.
And the lieutenant apparently was taking bets over the public service radio with his cohorts as to what the call was about, because the call came in, as I understand it, 10 white men with things pointing in the sky gathered in the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
And
Thought they said 10 elderly white guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. In other words,
Very important point, elderly guys.
in other words, a bunch of old farts, you know.
when I
I
heard,
wasn't going to say the fart part, but
And like I said, I've been really happy with this installation. You always think of things you could do differently. But I would recommend, if you're interested, take a look at the K0BG website and the 3905 Century Club mobile guide, and that'll give you a lot of good ideas. And the question is what kind of capability you want, and the configuration for your particular car or vehicle. So, and everyone's a little different. So they're all customized to one degree or another.
Do you have a single battery or do you have two batteries?
Nope, I have a single battery. It all runs off the main battery, and I have never had a problem in the several years, 3 or 4 years probably, that I've been running that. Now, I find that with the Kenwood, if I'm running high power, the 50 watts, then I usually need to run the engine. If I'm running, you know, medium or low power, I don't have any real problem with that kind of thing. But and part of that would depend a little bit on the gauge of wire you run from the battery. And I think I ran, I don't know, at least 12, maybe 10 gauge. I don't remember exactly. But it seems to handle everything okay.
Years ago, I had two batteries, and I had it rigged so that the car ran off one battery and the radio gear ran off the other. The radio battery got charged with the alternator, but not discharged with the car.
Yeah.
So that made it a little safer for me at that time.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do if you got the room. I really didn't have room under the hood for that. Everything's kind of compact. So part of the challenge was just fitting all the stuff in with what you got in terms of vehicle and space and that sort of thing. So, like I said, every vehicle is a little bit different. And again, depending on what you want to do. If you're only going to run UHF, VHF, you could probably get by with a handheld and maybe a small amplifier of some sort, or maybe no amplifier at all, depending on your antenna. So again, like I said, I've got 800 watt capability on HF, and I've got you know, roughly 50 watts on UHF and VHF. So
Yeah, Howard, tell us about your most interesting QSO while operating mobile.
oh, well, I didn't. Yeah, probably the one you're referring to is we were coming up from Austin, Texas, up through Oklahoma, I think, and heading or up through probably 81 someplace, or maybe we were on, yeah, coming up through Oklahoma, and I was listening probably on 20 meters, and ended up talking to a guy on Camino Island in Washington State. It's right on the coast. And this is while we were chugging along at whatever speed, 50, 60 mile an hour probably. And that was probably the most interesting thing. And it's one of those things that wasn't sure I was going to get him, but gave him a try, and he came back to me. So somewhere, I don't know if I have it with me.
you know, it's funny you mentioned that. I was running mobile one time on a 450. I was driving from Leesburg to home in South Riding, and I had a three-way conversation on 10 meters between a guy in Northern Ireland and a guy in Wales, and we were talking almost as if we were a three-way on a repeater.
Yeah. Well, when it works, it works. This was back in 2016, and it was on 20 meters, and it was a W7 PIG was the guy's call. I just found the thing down, but it was Islands on the Air kind of thing, and it was in Camino Island and Washington State. So that was probably one of the more interesting ones I've had. One of the things I do, in addition, once we typically take cross-country trips from here to Kansas to Colorado to Texas and back, and visiting family and friends, but I will try to get the repeater list put together for the routes that we take. We usually do the same basic routes, go up 495 to 270 and over, and get on I-70 going west. No, not I-70. I've forgotten now the route, but the main route going through Indianapolis and places like that. And so I try to get a list and put together, and I can program it into the Kenwood pretty well. It's got quite a few memories, I think up to 1,000 memories. So I try to get the coverage along the route that we're going to go, and which makes it a little easier and a little less cumbersome, I guess, to have a lot of stuff in memory. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question here. Do those websites have any guidance on removing things like your panels and such to make kind of a permanent professional looking type of installation, routing your cabling and stuff within the panels and
well,
in the car?
No, I'm not. I don't think so. I don't recall. What I did was I tried to tuck the wire in around the molding and stuff, like the cables coming off the dash on the driver's side coming down. There's a plastic molding that you can kind of pry apart a little bit, and I fed the wires in there, and then the sill along the door, I was able to lift that up and put wires under there, and then I ran it to the back seat where I have the main Kenwood transceiver part, plus the West Mountain radio distribution using Anderson power pole things, and I ran the main power in that, and then branched everything out under that. So the control lines to the rotatable antennas on top, again, I was able to just tuck it in, around the door trim and stuff like that, and the cables were pretty small, so I was able to, closing the door on some of those, there was enough padding, it wasn't a big problem.
There are tools available in kits at multiple internet vendors and stuff. They're called trim tools.
Yeah.
This is one I have lying around just to show it off, but I think there's 12 different pieces in the kit that I have.
Yeah.
It was like $9.95 at Harbor Freight. And just one advice I can give you, because I've done it 100 times, is all those panels are held in by clips, and those are made of plastic. So that's why they have spreads like this, so you can down the clip and not break the clip.
Now you tell me. No, I understand what you're saying, and those make it a whole lot easier. I agree. And I was lucky I didn't have to do a lot of that, but I guarantee you there's some cars where, that kit would be essential.
Using an actual, like a demo tool or a crowbar, because you'll break the plastic if you do that.
Yeah, it's very possible. Unfortunately, I didn't do it, but yeah, you're right.
Trust me.
I have a comment.
Okay.
A couple of comments, actually. If you make friends with your friendly body shop, a lot of those guys will pry those panels off for you. You don't really need them to put the panels back on, but you need them to pry them off, because those clips are in a certain place on different panels, and you got to know where those places are before you use a tool like Brendan has there, which is a good tool, but you got to know where to put it. And the second comment is, I don't know how many of you remember back in the days when you had to keep a mobile log, but I got around that business of having to write everything down by having a little cassette recorder, which ran the first 10 seconds of every QSO. Of course, it got a lot of BS in there. The start, it ran regardless, but the first 10 seconds usually took care of the call letters, which was all the FCC required. And then, of course, if I needed to, I could go back and record it on paper later.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I actually used a recording app to do recordings on the phone when I made contact. When I did mobile, and I was doing a lot of 10-meter mobile, as I mentioned that contact I told you before. I was on 10-meter mobile all the time, and I couldn't keep a log. So what I do, I record the contact.
Well, usually my co-pilot would do any writing down if I needed it. I have a small mobile log that I carry. And so that was one way I got around a lot of that. But the recording is a good idea. Of course, nowadays with the cell phones, you can record that directly. So that's probably the way to go today.
Has anybody heard of an app that would respond to the push to talk, so that it just records the first 5 or 10 seconds of transmit?
Well, I don't know of any. I wouldn't say there's not. There could well be something, or I guess you could rig something up too if it was voice activated, or perhaps you could do something off the key line on the mic. I'm not sure.
Several new radios have recording features built in. I don't know about mobile rigs, but HTs, some of them offer recording features, and there might be a couple mobile rigs that'll take an SD card that might enable recording. I don't know. But regarding the clip locations for panels and things, I've gotten in the habit over the years, something my dad taught me when I was young, was when you're going to buy a car, get the service manual, the full service manual for it too, and that shows you the location of everything.
Yep.
That's helpful.
That's a good idea, and I would highly recommend that today if you're going to, especially if you're going to do any kind of installation like this.
Yeah, one of the problems I ran into, I recently upgraded, I changed the radio in my car. I haven't decided yet if it's been an upgrade or not. And I drive a Golf sport wagon, and a Volkswagen, a 2017, and it is so tight. I mean, there is no room, there's barely room for me in the car.
Well, yeah.
You know, finding little places to mount a radio or run wires. I was running off of the cigarette lighter port, strong new car, new strong battery, so it was okay. And when I went to go ask to get the lines run through the firewall, it was going to be like $300. So I had a friend do it for half that, and a 6-pack of beer. So,
well, I considered doing it myself, and I probably could have if I needed to. I got at the dealer where I take this thing, the Chevy place over in Fairfax. They did it. It probably cost $100 or so to get it done, but it was worth it. I figured, I would eventually figure it out, but it was just easier to have them do it. So $300, I probably would have done it myself for sure.
There's another thing you have to be real careful of is hitting some of the airbag triggers on the newer cars, because they're in the roof, they're in the side panels, they're all over the place.
Yep.
Be sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's an issue. I mean, that can be a big issue, and quite frankly, some of the sensors on one of my Saturns in the passenger seat, and that's going bad, and it's intermittent, which is a real problem. And the problem is they don't make them anymore, and so I may have to find a seat out of a used Saturn, to get around that problem. So far, we managed to pass inspection, but that may not always be the case. And if I could find the engineers that designed that, I would have a few words with them, I think.
Thing to consider is if you go through vehicles quickly, like every 3 years or something, you might not want to drill holes or Dremel out areas for cables and stuff, because it would affect your resale value.
Yeah. I kept the holes to a minimum on mine. I have 1 or 2 screws in the dash, a couple of places that are small, so they could be sort of covered over if need be. But yeah, I did the same thing. I tried to avoid any major holes and stuff like that. So I think I was lucky with that particular vehicle, because I know some of the newer ones would really be tough nowadays, I think.
Presume that you could put in a little plug, a matching plug if you buy them to fit.
Yeah. So I'm gonna cut you off there. Howard, thank you so much. Really good presentation there. Yeah, I always appreciate seeing your installations. I learned so much from you. So
Yeah.
thank you.
All right. Well, glad to do it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.